that's when I got like more irate and really angry, and it made me want to hurt people. In my head. This video may be triggering for some people, so if you're not in the right mood, if it's not feeling good, turn off, come back later. You're doing it again. This always happens to me. You make me so angry. Ugh. When somebody is in the middle of a PTSD outburst, it can be scary, it's frightening, they're not thinking straight, and we want to help them, but we don't always know what to do. That's what this video is about. We're going to talk about that. Now, if you're in a situation where somebody's outburst is like what you just witnessed there, when they're violent, when they're aggressive, and they're outwardly attacking somebody, including yourself, the best thing you want to do is remove yourself from that situation, remove any children, anybody that could be harmed by that person. They will eventually calm down. If you need to call authorities, if you think they're that dangerous, then call authorities. But I just want to put that out there because there are some situations where we can't help. We just have to get ourselves out of there, let the steam blow off, and then maybe we can help afterwards. Why do these outbursts happen in the first place? You know, other people, they get angry sometimes, but it's not to the same extent. What's happening here? Well, with somebody who has PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, something in their environment is triggering them. It's reminding them of something traumatic that happened in their life. Trauma is simply when something threatens your life, when you could have died and you experience it in your body as though you could have died, and your body has encoded a memory with a trigger or multiple triggers that are reminders of what happened. And when something going on around somebody reminds them of that previous thing, let's say they had a father that was abusive, and right before the father hit them, the father would stomp on the ground. So if somebody around them stomps on the ground, their anxiety level raises really quickly, they get triggered, and they go into fight, flight, or freeze. In other words, their fear system is activated. The neurological fear system in their body has turned on. They're feeling afraid of something. And when it comes to these PTSD outbursts, what's happening is the fight part is going on, and the fight mechanism is related to the rage system in the body. The fear and the rage system, they're very closely related. Now, I myself am somebody who's experienced PTSD, and I have raged many times, so I can give you a bit of a perspective of what it feels like for the person who's going through it. Assuming that you yourself and the people around you are in no danger, the first thing that you maybe want to do is to encourage that person to get away from whatever that situation it is that's causing them to feel aggressive, that's causing them to get angry and irritable. So if you're in a store, get out of the store, leave the store as quickly as you can without causing any kind of panic. You know, if you are in a parking lot or something, leave the parking lot. Whatever it is, get away from that environment so that they have a chance to calm down, because as long as that trigger is around, they're always going to feel that anxiety level up high. Once you have them in an environment that's relatively safe, listen to them, allow them to express that anger and express that rage, because the more that they try to hold it in, the bigger it's going to fester and the more it's going to come out in an outburst. So allow them to express it. If there's something that they can do to discharge some of that anger, let them do that. Give them a pillow to punch, give them something to squeeze. If they like video games, maybe that's how they get rid of their anger, then let them do that. Give them an outlet, but also allow them to talk it through with you so that it's not always bottled up. It's not something that they always have to manage on their own. Then they know that you're a safe person who will validate their feelings and that they can go to in these times. In contrast, if you invalidate this person, if you tell them to calm down, you try to get them to not be so angry and try to mitigate them and make it like their feelings shouldn't be expressed, that maybe they're overreacting to something, they're going to hold those feelings in, and they're going to learn that you're not a safe person that they can go to, and those feelings are going to fester every time that they get triggered. And if they continue this pattern of holding in these aggressive, angry feelings, eventually the outbursts are going to get stronger, they're going to become more destructive, and they're going to be more dangerous for you. Now, if that's something that you're not able to do, it's too much for you to handle, maybe you just don't feel like you have the skills to be able to listen and to validate what's going on with them, maybe you're too intimate with them, there's too much emotion going on, try to get them to see a therapist or to seek outside help from a professional who's trained to be able to listen, who can be their safe person, and encourage them to call that person, to email, to talk to that person in these times so that they can calm down. Something else that may actually help that I've heard of is to have a therapist record a message for that person that they can play back for themselves in these moments to help them calm down, to help them soothe themselves. If they are calm enough to talk with you and to listen to you, maybe they're just a little bit irritated, maybe they've been through this a few times before and they've been able to calm themselves down a little bit, encourage them to do some mindful breathing and to be mindful about the situation. Try to get them to fact check. Is this something that they really should be afraid of? Can you remind them that they have PTSD and that what's going on right now may be a reflection of the PTSD? Of course, be careful when you do this. You don't want to make them feel like you're invalidating what they're going through, but throw the possibility out there. Is it possible that where we are right now is safe, that you are safe, and the way that you're feeling is just a reaction to something that's happened in the past? If you can remind them of that and get them to be mindful, to mindfully breathe, change their posture so that they don't get into that defensive pose, they open up and they are able to do deeper breathing and relax, that might be able to get rid of some of the symptoms, and you may be able to go on from there to talk it through and figure out exactly what happened. Something else to consider is that if this is a recurring problem, or maybe you have a single event that you're doing, maybe you're taking a trip and you know that somebody has difficulty with planes, for example, you might want to consider a medication and seeing a psychiatrist and seeing what they recommend. This is not a long-term solution, but it may be enough to tide you over to prevent an outburst from happening when you know what the triggers are and you know that they're working on it, but they just need something a little extra to help. And speaking of the triggers, remember, this is all short-term stuff that you're doing with this person. They're probably going to need long-term care, because post-traumatic stress disorder doesn't just go away. You have to actually manage it with a therapist, and you have to go back and expose yourself to some of those triggers, whether in a therapy office or out in the real world. They have the strategies that you can use. There's lots of different therapies that you can try. See a trauma specialist, somebody who specializes in trauma, who does therapy. They'll understand. They have ways to get through this. And the person that you know who has PTSD can learn to manage these triggers, learn to manage these outbursts, and change their behavior so that everybody can enjoy life. You don't have to always be stressed out and defensive and feeling like things are going to attack you. As somebody who's had PTSD, I have raged at people when I've been triggered by things. I didn't really understand what was going on in my body. I didn't know that I was triggered, but all I knew was that I was irritable and I needed to express it somehow. And when I tried to express it to people and they didn't want to hear it, or they tried to tell me to feel some other way, that's when I got like more irate and really angry, and it made me want to hurt people. Like, let's be honest, when you don't feel like you're being heard and your anger's already up to here, it just makes it go higher. So this is why I recommend really listening to the person if you can, and helping them to get in touch with what's going on in their body, and just being a safe person for them to talk to and teaching them what safety is. If you don't know what safety is, maybe you could learn some skills as well. If they have a therapist, go to therapy with them. Ask the therapist if there's something that you can do to help them. Of course, you don't want to force somebody to open up when they're not ready, and this is why I say sometimes you just need to give them their space, allow them to calm down, and then you can revisit it later when they're in a calm, safe environment, and that would be the time to talk about it. Don't always bring it up when it's in the middle of happening, because sometimes people are just too overwhelmed with their own emotions to be able to talk about it. You know, there were times when I was so angry and so rageful, I couldn't think straight. My prefrontal cortex, as they call it in your brain, was shut down. There was no way for me to reason through things. My emotions had taken over at that point. I know sometimes it can be difficult when somebody in our lives has PTSD and they have these outbursts, and it feels like they're always attacking us, which is ironic because they feel attacked. And we kind of like don't know what to do. Our emotions get all rattled up inside and we start to get anxious, and then we get defensive and things just spiral out of control from there. So I appreciate that you want to do something to help this person in your life who has PTSD. If you're able to, if you're not able to, just encourage them to see somebody. Take care of yourself first, of course. Don't put yourself in harm's way. And know that this is a complicated problem, and just because they're going through it and they rage and they have these outbursts, it doesn't mean that you've done something wrong, and it doesn't mean that they really don't like you. It's just what happens with their brain. It's just what they go through. If you want to learn more about your own mental health, head on over to youtube.com/RyanLiberty, hit subscribe, and special thank you to my patrons over on Patreon. They help make these videos possible, so thank you. And if you want to become a patron and help me on my mission of humanizing mental health, head on over there. I'll put the links below. If you're somebody who's experienced PTSD, what would you say to somebody who's trying to help? How can they help you? Let's discuss this. Maybe you're somebody who has had someone who has PTSD and you have helped them. What helped you help them? Leave that down below. Let's have a talk about this so we can learn from each other. As always, thank you for joining me out here. I'll see you around next time, everyone.